Hello everyone, welcome to this coloured pencil butterfly tutorial. I'm going to be going through how I drew this butterfly. I've done it on watercolour paper and I've already added the watercolour flowers in the background, but I thought I'd go in with coloured pencil for the actual butterfly because I can get more detail in and a bit more control. So I'm starting out by mapping the darkest parts that I can see in the reference photo. This butterfly drawing was unlike anything I've probably drawn before. It was a lot of different patterns on the wing. I can possibly relate it to an owl, a barn owl that I drew, with lots of different patterns on the wings. But the reason I've gone in with the darker colour to begin with is just so I can see what I need to leave clear, so that I can add the pinks and the browns and the blacks a little bit later on. So I'm going in with Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils and the Faber-Castell polychromos, and I'm just building up the layers of the pink. So I'm using lots and lots of different colours, starting off with the lightest one, adding a base layer, and then going in with some darkers, the magentas and the pinky purples, the middle-ish pinky purple I think it's called, and just mapping out the patterns on the pink. So it would be very easy to go in to a certain colour and just go over the whole thing in the same colour, but it's important to think about the patterns that are within that. So there's shadows and there's highlights even within a similar colour. I'm just darkening up the edges of the wing now, and I'm going in with the burnt siennas and the dark sepias, and also all of the browns. I think I used every single brown in the polychromos for this one, the brown ochres, yellow ochres. I blended in between with the Caran d'Ache because they are mainly wax based, so they do blend the colours quite nicely together. And then I just go over the darkest parts once I've got in everything else with the black. So then you can see the kind of contrast and you know how dark you need to take the pinks. And what I'll find is once I get more darker colours in, I'll go back over the pinks that I've done before and just possibly darken them up a little bit more, because it's really hard to tell how dark to go to begin with. So there you go, the dark sepia again, and I'm building up those different patterns on the wing, going in with the black in the areas that I know are black and that are going to stay black and not go any darker. I've already laid down some base layers under the black so that I know that it's not going to be completely flat. I've also added a little bit of dark indigo in the black just to give it a little bit of a punch, so it doesn't lay flat on the paper. You can see I'm building up the layers here before I go in with the black. That's the very last colour. Adding some yellows and some browns, making sure that I'm leaving out any highlights. And what I tend to do is leave them a lot fatter than I want them to be. So if there are, as you can see at the top of the wing, there are some lines of definite kind of white, I've left those really fat to begin with because I know I can then go in and add some more colours to narrow them and to add more depth, but I've allowed myself enough paper showing through that I don't add pigment where I don't want it, because I do want them to shine. I do want them to be highlights. You know, that's what gives this drawing in the end its realism, and you know, the level of detail makes it much more interesting. So there's an area on this wing here which has a lot of browns, the pinks on the top, so I'm going in with the lightest colours I can see first of all, the yellow ochres, the Naples yellow I think, and then I'm going to go in with the pinks again, starting with the lightest colour and then adding lots of different pinks on top until I get to the magenta, which finishes it off nicely. So going into the pink sections, I'm working generally in little sections just so that it's clear in my mind where I am, because it's very, very easy to get lost in something like this. I'm blending over just to smooth the surface and to blend some of the colours together with the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil. I'm using the white and the buff titanium. It does kind of take up a little bit of pigment because it's quite opaque, so you'll tend to lose some of the vibrancy of the pink, but you can always go over the top again. There you can see I'm laying down the layers of the browns all the way up to the black, and the black outlines the pink section so that I know I know I can go in with that black. I've got confidence to go in because it's not going to have any other colours added on the top unless that's to deepen the black. Making sure that I'm leaving the highlights and just going in with very, very tiny pencil strokes so that I don't go in and go over areas that I know need to be kept lighter. It's just important to take your time here, not to rush. It could be quite easy for your, to get a little bit boggled down by all the details and stuff and just want to get through it. But I think if that's the case, just step away, go and make a cup of tea and come back to it with fresh eyes, and you'd be glad that you didn't rush it in the end. There you go. I found the magenta colour in the polychromos and I was so excited I decided to go over the parts of the pink with the magenta, and it just gave it a pop. It just added that vibrancy, which is what I was looking for. So I was really chuffed to find this pencil. It was hidden amongst the rest. Just adding the details of the antenna there. And there was lots of different colours in the body of this butterfly. There were lots of blues, lots of purples, browns, going in with the flesh tones. And again, just mapping out some details that I can see, taking my time. Although it looks like this is really, really fast, it's actually speeded up by about 30 times here. So you can see how long this drawing would actually take in real time. So I've just finished part of the body. It looks a little bit lopsided at this point because I needed to go in and add the other part of the wing just to see how that body was lying against that part of the wing. So now I've done one side of the butterfly, I kind of know what I'm doing. I know what's worked, I know what hasn't worked, and you can almost do this second part of the drawing in hindsight because you've already done it before. So the second part was a lot quicker. I knew which colours to use, I had them all laid out in front of me. That's a tip as well if you are working on a portrait, and sometimes I'm working on a couple of pieces at the same time. Just have a separate jar with the colours that you're using on that portrait, and then you don't need to find them again every time. So again, going in with the pinks, and now I've got my magenta. I know I can go in at the very end and just add in, there it is, add in lots of that really lovely vibrant pink that just makes those pink areas pop quite a lot. Going in with the black again just to outline the lovely pinks, and they do make them stand out a lot more, but only going into the areas with the black that I am definitely sure I don't need to erase, because it just won't. It will create a stain, and I've probably burnished as well, which means pressing into the tooth of the paper to flatten it, and that means that you're then unable to add many more layers, if any, on top of it. There you go. I'm going in and starting to do the bottom section of the butterfly. I've added all of those browns in like a gradient colour, so there's a highlight through it, and it goes from light to dark and graduates up through that little pattern that's on the wing. Adding some more pinks, making sure that I'm going in and leaving certain areas free of too much pigment to give it more of a texture and more interest. And now going in with the Caran d'Ache Luminance to blend. Always fantastic pencils. The yellows, the browns, again, probably using all of them. Certain areas I did use the kneadable eraser just to pull up certain areas, especially on those brown areas. If I've gone a little bit too hard, there you go, you can see I'm doing that. It just lifts up some of the top layers and creates a really nice texture, so that's a good tool to have in your kit. And going in with the black there, just outlining the pinks. You can see it really does make it pop. And again, just the finishing touches to the edge of the wing. And adding the purples and pinks. I am outlining the wing with some darks, which is fantastic, to just make that edge pop and to crispen it up, just for the final detail, so it's not blurry at the edges, it's nice and crisp. I wanted a bit of a contrast between the butterfly and the flowers, so I did want the butterfly to stand out. Just finishing off with some black. And Adding some final touches to the pinks. Again, going in with that magenta colour. I do love that colour. And just adding a little bit more vibrancy, just crispening up the edges and smoothing out some other edges. There you go, I'm going over the whole butterfly just to make sure that it's all cohesive and it all works well together. Final touches in the white because they weren't completely white, and just making sure that the body looks correct, adding a little bit more black just to outline certain areas. And there you go, that's the finished butterfly. That's the watery wash of the watercolours for the flowers. And then you can see I've gone in a lot darker with the butterfly just to make it pop and stand out. You can see the lovely pinks and the patterns on the wing. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, it would be great if you could like and subscribe. And I really look forward to seeing you next time.